The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the cramped notary office on Elm Street, casting harsh shadows across the mahogany table where my entire life's work sat reduced to a single piece of paper. The deed to 1247 Maple Avenue, House Sarah, and I built with our own hands 32 years ago, lay before me like a death warrant. My 3 children surrounded me like vultures circling prey. Mark, my eldest at 45, leaned forward in his expensive suit, the one I'd helped him buy for job interviews after his last venture failed. Lisa sat to my right, her manicured fingers drumming impatiently against her designer anniversary gift I'd given her last year when money was tight. Jennifer, my youngest, perched on the edge of her chair, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes calculating as a bank appraiser. "Dad, this is really for the best," Jennifer said, placing her hand over mine with practiced tenderness. "The house is too big for you now. You need care, supervision." "We've found a lovely facility with a waiting list," Mark interrupted, checking his Rolex. "We need to move quickly before the spot is gone." I stared at the security camera mounted. In the corner, its red recording light blinking steadily. The notary, Mrs. Rodriguez, had mentioned it when we arrived. "All transactions are recorded for legal protection," she'd said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the documents. She had no idea she was about to witness the performance of a lifetime. The house they wanted me to sign away wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was Sarah's rose garden, planted the year Jennifer was born. It was the workshop where I'd taught Mark to use tools, back when he'd looked at me with respect instead of impatience. It was the kitchen where Lisa had learned to bake, flour dusting her young face as she stood on a step stool to reach the counter. Every board in that house told a story. The hardwood floors I'd laid during my vacation weeks, the crown molding I'd installed by lamplight after 12-hour shifts at the construction site, the bay window where Sarah used to read her mystery novels, steam rising from her afternoon tea. But to them, sitting here in this sterile office, it was just a commodity. Market value, $750,000. Profit potential, enough to solve all their financial problems while warehousing their inconvenient father. The doctor said, "Your memory issues are progressing," Lisa added, her voice carrying that patronizing tone I'd grown to recognize. "Last week, you forgot to turn off the stove again." I hadn't forgotten anything. I'd been distracted by their phone call, the one they thought I couldn't hear through the thin walls of my own home. The call where they'd discussed my deteriorating condition and how quickly they could liquidate my assets once I was safely tucked away. Mark slid the pen closer to my hand. "Just sign here, Dad. We've taken care of everything." The notary camera continued its silent vigil, recording every word, every gesture, every moment of this carefully orchestrated deception. They thought they were manipulating a confused old man into surrendering his life's work. They had no idea I'd been documenting their scheme for weeks. My hand hovered over the signature line, the pen trembling not from age or confusion, but from the effort it took to maintain this performance. In the corner, that camera captured everything. Their pressure tactics, their lies about my mental state, their eagerness to profit from my alleged incompetence. I looked up at Mrs. Rodriguez, then directly into the camera lens. When I spoke, my voice was clear, steady, and loud enough for the recording to capture every syllable. "For the record," I said, "I want it clearly understood that I am being coerced into signing this document against my will." The room went dead, silent. 3 faces stared at me in shock as the camera kept rolling, preserving their expressions for posterity. That signature was about to cost them everything. To understand what they wanted to take from me, you have to understand what Sarah and I created together. In 1991, we bought a half-acre lot on Maple Avenue for $8,000, every penny of our savings, plus a loan from my brother Jim that took us 5 years to repay. Sarah was 3 months pregnant with Mark, then her hand resting on her barely showing belly as we walked the overgrown property. Dreaming aloud about the life we'd build there, I was 28, working construction for Morrison Brothers, and Sarah taught 3rd grade at Roosevelt Elementary. Together, we made $42,000 a year, which felt like a fortune until we started pricing lumber and permits. We lived in a cramped apartment above Murphy's Hardware, while I spent every weekend and evening digging the foundation by hand. Sarah would bring me sandwiches and lemonade, sitting on an overturned bucket while I mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow. I'd borrowed from my foreman. "This corner will be the nursery," she'd say, pointing to where I was laying the northeast foundation wall. "I want windows on 2 sides so the baby can watch the sunrise." Those windows cost an extra $600 we didn't have. I worked overtime for 3 months, coming home with concrete dust under my fingernails and plaster in my hair. Sarah never complained, even when I fell asleep at the dinner table. Exhausted from 16-hour days, Mark was born 2 weeks before we moved in. I remember carrying Sarah across the threshold of a house that still smelled like sawdust and paint. Our newborn son wrapped in the yellow blanket her mother had knitted. The walls were bare drywall, the floors unfinished plywood, but it was ours. For the next 30 years, every improvement was a family project. Lisa arrived in 1994, and I built her crib in the basement workshop I'd framed out behind the furnace. Jennifer came along in 1996, and by then we'd finished the hardwood floors upstairs. Each board laid with Sarah holding the level while I hammered. The sacrifices started early and never stopped. When Mark turned 18 and got accepted to Colorado State, we refinanced the house for his tuition, $28,000 at 8% interest. Payments that stretched our budget until Sarah took a second job tutoring after school. Lisa's wedding in 2018 cost us $35,000. She'd seen a venue in the mountains, tears streaming down her face as she begged us to make her dream come true. I picked up weekend work installing cabinets, my 55-year-old back aching as I crouched in cramped kitchens, counting every dollar toward her perfect day. Jennifer's business loan needed a cosigner when the bank balked at her credit score. $40,000 guaranteed against our house, the equity Sarah and I had built nail by nail. "Dad, you believe in me, right?" she'd asked, and how could I say no to my baby girl's dreams? The workshop where I'd built their cribs became Mark's refuge during his divorce. The garden where Sarah had taught them to plant tomatoes was where Lisa brought her children every Sunday, continuing traditions she'd learned at her mother's side. The kitchen, where we'd shared countless family dinners, was where Jennifer still called me every week, updating me on her struggling boutique. But Sarah's presence lived strongest in the details. They couldn't see on a real estate listing the morning glory vines she'd trained around the back porch, now covering the lattice I'd built for her 40th birthday. The built-in bookshelves where she'd arranged our collection. Organizing novels by author and keeping my technical manuals on the bottom shelf where the grandkids couldn't reach them. Her reading chair by the bay window, positioned perfectly to catch the afternoon light. The herb garden outside the kitchen door, where rosemary and thyme still grew wild from her careful plantings. The Christmas ornaments stored in the attic, each one marking a year of celebrations. First steps, lost teeth, graduation parties, .2. Mark, Lisa, and Jennifer. These were obstacles to a profitable sale. To me, they were proof that love could be measured in square footage, that a marriage could be built as solidly as a foundation, and that some things were worth more than their market value. The phone call that shattered my illusions came on a Tuesday evening while I was washing dishes in Sarah's kitchen. I'd left my bedroom window open to catch the spring breeze, never imagining it would carry the sound of my own children, plotting my downfall from Lisa's car in the driveway. "Mark, we can't wait any longer." Lisa's voice drifted up clearly through the night air. "Dad's getting worse. Yesterday he asked me twice when Mom died. That's not normal for someone his age." I froze, my hands still sudsy from the dinner plate. I'd been scrubbing. Sarah had been gone 3 years. I remembered the exact date, April 15th, because it was tax day, and she'd joked from her hospital bed about leaving me with one less thing to worry about. "The memory issues are perfect cover," Mark replied, his voice carrying that businesslike tone he'd inherited from his corporate days. "Dr. Patterson already documented the incidents," Lisa reported, forgetting to turn off appliances, repeating questions, confusion about dates. My grip tightened on the plate. Dr. Patterson was Jennifer's friend from college, now a geriatrician who'd examined me after my children's concerned insistence. I'd told him about being distracted lately, missing Sarah more as spring returned. He'd twisted my grief into symptoms. "Jennifer's handling the assisted living research," Lisa continued. "She found a place in Thornton that takes Medicaid after the first year. Clean, decent staff, nothing fancy but adequate." Adequate. The word hit like a physical blow. After 30 years of providing everything they needed, I'd earned adequate. What's our timeline? Mark asked. 2 weeks maximum. Jennifer thinks Dad's still coherent enough to fight us if he realizes what's happening. But Dr. Patterson says cognitive decline accelerates rapidly at his age. We need to move while he's still cooperative. Cooperative, they meant while I still trusted them enough to sign whatever they put in front of me. The house appraisal came back at $750, Lisa said, and I heard paper rustling. After realtor fees and staging costs, we're looking at about $700,000 clear. Split 3 ways, that's enough to handle all our situations. Their situations, Mark's failed restaurant venture that had cost him his marriage, and most of his savings, Lisa's divorce settlement that left her scrambling to maintain her lifestyle. Jennifer's boutique hemorrhaging money faster than she could borrow against her credit cards. The power of attorney paperwork is ready, Mark continued. Medical POA first, then financial. Once we have that, the house sale is just a formality. Dad signs, or we sign for him, due to incompetence. Jennifer's the key, Lisa said. She's always been his favorite, and she's playing the concerned daughter perfectly. All those visits, bringing groceries, checking on him, building the narrative that he can't live alone safely. I thought of Jennifer's recent attention, how she'd started dropping by daily with casseroles and worried questions about my health, the way she'd asked about my bills, offering to help organize my finances, her gentle suggestions that the house was too much work, that I deserved rest. What if he refuses the assisted living? Mark asked. Then we use the medical documentation. To have him declared incompetent, Dr. Patterson will testify that he's a danger to himself. Jennifer's already started documenting incidents leaving doors unlocked, forgetting appointments, that nonsense about talking to Mom's picture. I did talk to Sarah's picture. Every morning with my coffee, sharing plans for the day, asking her opinion about decisions. It wasn't confusion, it was comfort. But in their narrative, love became lunacy. 2 weeks, Lisa repeated. Jennifer schedules the notary appointment under the pretense of updating his will. We all show up for moral support, guide him through the signatures, and by month's end, he's settled somewhere safe while we handle the estate. Safe, protected, cared for. They wrapped their theft in the language of concern, but I heard the truth through my bedroom window. I was no longer there. Father I was their solution. The dishes could wait. I had 2 weeks to prove I was anything but helpless. The law offices of Chen and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a glass building downtown. Far from the family drama brewing on Maple Avenue, I'd found Margaret Chen through the Colorado Bar Association website, drawn to her specialization in elder law and her 5-star reviews from clients who praised her directness and competence. At 62, Margaret Chen had the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen every variation of family greed disguised as concern. Her office walls displayed certificates from the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, alongside family photos that suggested she understood both professional expertise and personal loyalty. Mr. Harrison, she said, gesturing to the chair across. From her mahogany desk, tell me about your situation. I laid out everything: the overheard conversation, Dr. Patterson's examination, my children's sudden interest in my welfare, and their timeline for forcing my signature. Margaret took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking for clarification about dates and specific statements. Let me be clear about the law, she said when I finished. You are the sole owner of your property. No one can force you to sign a deed transfer unless you've been legally declared incompetent by a court, which requires much more than a single doctor's opinion. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by anger at my children's deception. Power of attorney documents. Require your voluntary signature, Margaret continued. If you're coerced, threatened, or misled about their contents, those signatures are legally invalid. The key word is voluntary. You must understand what you're signing and agree freely. What about their claims of my memory problems? Colorado requires clear and convincing evidence of mental incapacity, not occasional forgetfulness or grief responses. Missing your wife, feeling distracted, even forgetting to turn off appliances, none of that constitutes legal incompetence. She leaned forward. Has anyone petitioned the court for guardianship proceedings? No, nothing official. Just Dr. Patterson's examination. Then they're operating outside legal authority. If they attempt to coerce your signature or claim you're incompetent without court proceedings, they're potentially committing elder abuse, both financial and emotional. Margaret pulled a statute book from her shelf, flipping to a marked page. Colorado Criminal Code, Section 18-6.5 to 103. Financial exploitation of an at-risk elder is a felony. If they're planning to use false claims of incompetence to steal your assets, they're looking at serious criminal charges. The word felony hung in the air between us. My children weren't just betraying me, they were risking their futures. What do you recommend? Document everything. Record conversations when legally permissible. Colorado is a one-party consent state, meaning you can record conversations you're part of. If they force a notary appointment, most offices have security cameras that record all transactions. She handed me her business card and a pamphlet titled Protecting Yourself from Elder Financial Abuse. If they attempt coercion during any signing, state clearly that you're being pressured and that you don't consent. Notaries are required to refuse services if they suspect coercion. Any recordings of such statements would be admissible in court. Can you represent me if this escalates? Absolutely. My retainer for elder protection cases is $1,500, and I can have restraining orders filed within 24 hours if necessary. Margaret's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd fought these battles before. Mr. Harrison, you have more legal protection than your children realize. The question is whether you're prepared to use it. I wrote the check on the spot. They assumed I was helpless and ignorant. Margaret Chen had just armed me with the law. Itself, my children had 2 weeks to make their move. I now had the legal knowledge to destroy them if they tried. Margaret Chen's advice echoed in my mind as I transformed from grieving widower into methodical documenter. If my children wanted to play legal games, they'd discover their father had learned the rules better than they had. I started with the financial records, spreading 30 years of bank statements across Sarah's dining room table, like evidence at a crime scene. Each canceled check told a story they'd conveniently forgotten. The $28,000 check for Mark's college tuition at Colorado State, the $35,000 wire transfer for Lisa's mountain wedding venue, the $40,000 certified check I'd co-signed when Jennifer's boutique needed startup capital. The totals, $203,847 in documented loans, gifts, and co-signed obligations over the past 15 years. Not one penny had been repaid, despite their promises and my careful record-keeping. I photocopied every statement, every canceled check, every loan document that bore my signature alongside theirs. The house documentation required a different approach. I walked through each room with my digital camera, photographing the custom built-in side crafted by hand, the kitchen cabinets with their hand-rooted edges and soft close hinges, the master bathroom vanity I'd designed around Sarah's height specifications, the basement workshop with its custom tool, storage, and ventilation system I'd engineered myself. Each photograph included a handwritten note card detailing the construction date, materials used, and estimated replacement cost. The crown molding alone represented 200 hours of weekend labor and $3,200 in premium lumber. The hardwood floors, solid oak, not laminate, had cost us $12,000 in materials, plus my sweat equity over 6 months of evening installation. My research into comparable property values confirmed what Lisa had whispered in the driveway. 3 houses on similar lots had sold in the past 6 months, $742,000, $763,000, and $781,000. The realtor websites showed properties with far less custom work than mine, selling for premium prices. Conservative estimate, $750,000. Exactly what they'd calculated for their inheritance grab. The recording device came from Radio Shack, a small digital unit no bigger than a cigarette pack that could capture 8 hours of conversation. I tested it in the basement workshop first, playing back my voice, reading newspaper headlines, until I was satisfied with the audio quality. The device fit perfectly inside the false bottom drawer of my desk in the home office, where family meetings had always taken place. I created 2 sets of files, one obvious set they might find if they searched, containing basic household records and insurance policies. The real documentation went into a safety deposit box at First National, where I'd banked for 22 years. Manager Patricia Williams processed the rental personally, commenting on how organized my paperwork was compared to most customers. Planning "Ahead is smart, Mr. Harrison," she said, sealing the metal box containing copies of everything. "Too many families fight over assets because the documentation isn't clear. If only she knew how prophetic her words were." The hidden recording device captured its first conversation 3 days later when Jennifer arrived for her weekly wellness check. She'd brought groceries and her concerned daughter act, asking about my eating habits and whether I'd remembered to take my blood pressure medication. "Dad, Mark and Lisa are worried about you living alone," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk while the device recorded every word. "We've been talking about options that might give you more support." "What kind of options?" "Well, there are some wonderful senior communities now. Not nursing homes, more like assisted living, with medical staff available if needed. You'd have your own apartment, meal service, activities with people your own age." The recorder captured the slight pause before she added, "And we could handle selling the house so you don't have to worry about maintenance or property taxes." "I hadn't thought about selling." "Oh, Dad, this place is too much for one person. The yard work alone, all those rooms to clean. You deserve to relax and let other people take care of the details." Every word preserved digitally, building the case Margaret Chen had told me to construct. They weren't protecting me, they were positioning me for removal. That evening, I uploaded the audio file to a secure cloud storage account and emailed copies to myself at 3 different addresses. When this war reached the courtroom, I'd have ammunition they never saw coming. The assault on my independence began in earnest the following week, orchestrated with the precision of a military campaign. Mark arrived first on Monday morning, appearing at my door with coffee and pastries from Sarah's favorite bakery, a detail that felt calculated to trigger my emotions. "Dad, I've been thinking about what you said regarding updating your will," he said, settling into the living room chair Sarah used to occupy. "It's been 3 years since Mom died, and estate planning is crucial at your age." I hadn't mentioned updating my will. The recording device in my office would later confirm this conversation as the opening move in their chess game. "Lisa and I have been researching estate attorneys," Mark continued, pulling out his phone with practiced casualness. "We found someone who specializes in senior planning. Very reasonable rates, comes to your house for convenience." Wednesday brought Lisa's contribution to the campaign. She arrived with her friend, Dr. Rebecca Santos, introduced as a geriatric specialist who happened to be in the neighborhood. Dr. Santos was young, maybe 30, participating in manipulation. "Your children are concerned about some memory issues," Dr. Santos said, settling at my kitchen table with a clipboard full of forms. "Nothing unusual for someone your age, but early detection is important for planning purposes." The questions were innocuous at first. What year was it? Who was the president? Could I count backward from 100 by 7s? I answered correctly, noting how her expression grew slightly disappointed with each accurate response. "Have you experienced any confusion lately? Difficulty remembering appointments or finding familiar places? Sometimes I get distracted thinking about my wife." I admitted honestly. She wrote that down as if grief was a symptom of dementia. Came Thursday, when Jennifer arrived in tears tears that seemed genuine until I remembered her high school drama club performances. She collapsed into my arms with practiced desperation, sobbing about her fears for my safety. "Dad, I'm so scared something will happen to you alone in this big house," she whispered against my shoulder. "Yesterday you left the front door unlocked. When I visited last week, you seemed confused about what day it was. I had left the door unlocked for the 30 seconds between her arrival and when I answered it. The day confusion was me double-checking the date because I'd been focused on documenting their conversations. What if you fell and couldn't reach the phone? What if you forgot to turn off the stove and started a fire?" Her tears were real, but they weren't for my safety. They were for the possibility that their timeline might fail. "I've been looking at some wonderful places where you'd be safe but still independent," she continued, producing glossy brochures from her purse. "Sunset Manor has a waiting list, but they had a cancellation. We could tour it this weekend." The final piece fell into place. Friday, when I discovered a business card that had fallen from Lisa's purse during her Wednesday visit, Rebecca Thornton, Platinum Realty, with a handwritten note on the back. Market analysis completed. Timeline 2 to 3 weeks for staging and listing. That evening, Jennifer called with a perfect solution to all my problems. "Dad, I've scheduled a notary to come to the house Monday morning, just to update your will and maybe organize some legal documents. Nothing complicated, Mark, and Lisa will be there for moral support. They'd performed their concern beautifully, but my recording devices had documented every rehearsed word, every manipulative tear, every calculated pressure point designed to make me grateful for my own imprisonment. Monday morning would indeed bring signatures, just not the ones they expected. Friday evening, I called Margaret Chen from the secure phone I'd purchased with Coercion, untraceable prepaid device that wouldn't appear on any family phone records. Her office stayed open late for emergencies, and this qualified as exactly that. They've scheduled the notary appointment for Monday morning at 10. I told her, pacing Sarah's kitchen, while the digital recorder captured our conversation for my own protection. Jennifer said, "It's just to update my will, but I know better. Do you want me present as your legal representative?" "Absolutely, but they can't know you're coming. I need them to show their true intentions on camera before you intervene." Margaret's laugh was sharp as a blade. "Mr. Harrison, you're learning to think like a lawyer. I'll arrive 30 minutes after the appointment starts, giving them time to reveal their coercion tactics before I shut it down." Saturday morning, I drove to the notary office Jennifer had selected Martinez Professional Services on Collins Avenue. The building was older but well-maintained, with a small lobby and clear sightlines through glass doors. I introduced myself to Rosa Martinez, the notary, explaining that I'd be bringing family members for a document signing on Monday. "We record all transactions for legal protection," she confirmed, gesturing to the security camera mounted in the corner of her office, standard practice for estate documents. "Some families get emotional during these procedures, and the recording protects everyone involved." Perfect. I asked to see the office layout, claiming concern about wheelchair accessibility for a future visit. Mrs. Martinez showed me the camera angles, the microphone placement, even the backup recording system that automatically saved files to cloud storage. Their security measures would become my evidence vault. Sunday, I rehearsed my statements in the basement workshop, practicing the clear, measured delivery that would leave no doubt about my mental competence or my recognition of coercion. The phrases Margaret had coached me on became second nature. "I am being pressured against my will. This signature is being coerced through false claims about my mental capacity. I do not consent to any transfer of my property." I also prepared my own backup recording system. The digital device would fit in my shirt pocket, positioned to capture everything the security camera might miss. I tested the audio quality repeatedly, ensuring every word would be clearly audible if this case went to court. The alternative housing arrangements required delicate timing. I contacted Meadowbrook Senior Living, a legitimate assisted living community 30 miles away in Boulder, explaining that I was considering a voluntary move to be closer to my brother Jim. The intake coordinator, Sandra Walsh, scheduled a Tuesday tour and began processing my application. "The wonderful thing about choosing your own transition," Sandra said during our phone conversation, "is that you maintain complete control over your finances and medical decisions. Many of our residents come here after selling their family homes, using the proceeds to secure their future independence. Independence, the word my children were trying to steal while claiming to protect it." Monday morning, I opened a new bank account at Mountain West Credit Union, depositing the cashier's check I'd obtained by liquidating one of my savings accounts. $50,000, enough to prove my mental competence and financial independence to any judge who might later question my decisions. The account came with online access and mobile banking services the manager demonstrated with the patience of someone accustomed to teaching seniors new technology. I was sharper than she expected, grasping the digital interface quickly and setting up automatic transfers that would further document my cognitive abilities. Back home, I positioned myself in the living room with a clear view of the driveway, my recording device tested and ready in my shirt pocket. Margaret Chen was on standby at her office, waiting for my signal to intervene. The security camera at Martinez Professional Services would capture everything they said and did at exactly 10 o'clock. 3 cars pulled into my driveway, Mark's luxury sedan, Lisa's SUV, and Jennifer's compact car, arriving in formation like an invasion force. They thought they were orchestrating my surrender. Instead, they were walking into the most documented elder abuse case Margaret Chen would ever prosecute. I opened the front door with a smile, ready to give them all the rope. They needed to hang themselves. The notary office felt smaller, with 5 people crowded around Rosa Martinez's desk. The security camera's red light blinking steadily as it recorded what would become the most damaging evidence in Colorado. Elder abuse court records that year. Mark spread the documents across the table with theatrical precision, his expensive suit and gold watch catching the fluorescent light. "Dad, this is just routine estate planning," he said, his voice carrying that patronizing tone I'd grown to recognize. "Mrs. Martinez will walk you through each signature." Lisa sat to my right, her manicured fingers already reaching for the first page. "The power of attorney forms are standard, Dad. Just in case something happens and we need to help manage your affairs." Jennifer completed the triangle of pressure, her hand resting on my shoulder with practiced tenderness. "We're doing this because we love you, Dad, because we want you protected." Rosa Martinez shuffled through the papers, her professional demeanor faltering as she read the documents more carefully. "Mr. Harrison, this deed transfer would give your children complete ownership of your property. Are you certain this is what you want?" Before I could answer, Mark leaned forward with barely concealed irritation. "Mrs. Martinez, we've explained the situation. Dad's been having memory issues, confusion about daily tasks," Dr. Santos documented. "Cognitive decline just last week. The recording device in my pocket captured every word while the security camera preserved their expressions. The false concern, the barely hidden greed, the assumption that I was too confused to understand what was happening." Mr. Harrison, Rosa said directly to me, "Do you understand that signing this deed means you would no longer own your home?" "I understand perfectly," I replied, my voice clear and steady. "I also understand that I'm being coerced into signing these documents through false claims about my mental capacity." The room went silent except for the hum of the security camera. Mark's facade cracked first. "Dad, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you here. Help me, or help yourselves too. $700,000 in real estate equity." Lisa's face flushed red. "That's not what this is about. You can't live alone anymore. Yesterday you left the stove on for hours. I made coffee and forgot to turn off the burner for 20 minutes while I was reading the newspaper," I said calmly. "That's not dementia, Lisa. That's distraction." Jennifer's tears began flowing, real ones this time, born of panic rather than performance. "Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be. We found you a lovely place at Sunset Manor. You'll be safe there. Safe, or out of the way while you liquidate my assets." The truth spilled out with the desperation of cornered animals. Mark slammed his hand on the desk, his composure finally shredding. "Fine. You want the truth? I'm facing bankruptcy. The restaurant failed, the divorce cleaned me out, and I'm 3 months behind on my condo payments. That house is sitting there worth $750,000 while you rattle around in it alone." Talking to Mom's pictures, Lisa's careful mask dissolved. "My divorce settlement runs out next month. Brad's lawyers are circling like sharks, and I can't maintain the kids' lifestyle on my salary alone. We need that money, Dad. We've earned it after putting up with your stubbornness for 3 years." Jennifer's sob caught in her throat. "The boutique is hemorrhaging money. I owe $40,000 on credit cards, and the lease renewal is coming up. We hoped you'd understand that we need help too." Rosa Martinez's pen had stopped moving entirely, her eyes wide as she witnessed the complete breakdown of their charade. "So you decided to have me declared incompetent and steal my house," I said, my voice carrying 30 years of disappointment. "You brought a fake doctor to examine me, scheduled this appointment under false pretenses, and planned to warehouse me in a Medicaid facility while you split my life's work. You're too senile to manage it anyway," Mark snapped, his rage finally unfiltered. "Half the time you don't even remember what day it is." The office door opened with perfect timing, and Margaret Chen entered with the authority of someone who'd heard enough. "Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry I'm late. I see you've started without your legal representation." 3 faces turned toward her with expressions of pure horror. "I'm Margaret Chen, Mr. Harrison's estate attorney," she announced to the security camera as much as to the room. "I've been retained to ensure my client's rights are protected during this transaction." Rosa Martinez found her voice first. "Ma'am, there have been several concerning statements made during this appointment. Claims of coercion, accusations of incompetence, and admissions that this transfer is being done against Mr. Harrison's will." Margaret smiled with the satisfaction of a prosecutor who'd just watched defendants confess on video. "Mrs. Martinez, I strongly recommend you refuse to notarize these documents and file a report with Adult Protective Services regarding suspected elder abuse. Mark started to protest, but Margaret cut him off. Mr. Harrison, do you freely and voluntarily wish to transfer ownership of your property to these individuals? I looked directly into the security camera one final time. Absolutely not. This entire proceeding has been an attempt to coerce me into signing over my assets based on false claims about my mental competence. I am of sound mind, I understand exactly what these documents contain, and I refuse to sign them. Rosa Martinez gathered the papers with shaking hands. This appointment is terminated. I cannot in good conscience notarize any of these documents. The security camera captured their defeat in high definition, preserving their faces for the criminal investigation that would follow. They had demanded my compliance. Instead, the documentation delivered their consequences. Tuesday morning brought the sound of official business to my quiet neighborhood. The Adult Protective Services investigator arrived at precisely 9 o'clock. A woman named Detective Sarah Coleman, whose 20-year career in elder abuse cases had given her the ability to spot manipulation from across a room. Mr. Harrison, I've reviewed the security footage from Martinez Professional Services, she said, settling into Sarah's old reading chair with a thick file folder. I've also listened to the audio recordings your attorney provided. This is one of the clearest cases of attempted elder financial abuse I've seen. The investigation moved with startling speed. Rosa Martinez had filed her mandatory elder abuse report within hours of Monday's debacle, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation had tagged the case as priority due to the video evidence. Detective Coleman's team had already interviewed Dr. Rebecca Santos, who admitted under questioning that she'd been pressured by Lisa to emphasize cognitive concerns in her informal assessment. Dr. Santos is cooperating fully, Detective Coleman continued. She's provided written testimony that her examination showed no signs of dementia or significant cognitive impairment. Her notes indicate you were grieving but mentally competent. Wednesday's mail brought the first legal domino to fall. Mark's business creditors had been monitoring his financial situation, and news of his failed attempt to access my assets triggered immediate action. The loan I'd co-signed for his restaurant equipment, $47,000. Still, outstanding went into accelerated collection. His condo association filed a lien for unpaid maintenance fees, and his ex-wife's attorney reopened alimony negotiations based on his apparent access to family wealth. Mr. Harrison doesn't have access to family wealth, Margaret Chen explained during her phone call to Mark's lawyer. My client explicitly refused to transfer any assets and has documented proof that your client attempted to coerce him through false medical claims. Lisa's situation deteriorated even faster. Her ex-husband's attorney had been investigating her financial claims during their ongoing custody dispute, and the app's report provided exactly the ammunition he needed. By Thursday, he'd filed motions questioning her fitness as a primary parent, citing her attempt to defraud an elderly relative as evidence of moral character. The emergency restraining orders Margaret filed on my behalf were granted within 20 hours. Judge Patricia Williams reviewed the video evidence and my recorded conversations, then signed orders preventing all 3 children from contacting me directly, entering my property, or attempting any further legal manipulation. Finds clear evidence of attempted elder financial abuse, Judge Williams wrote in her order. The defendants are prohibited from any contact with the victim except through legal counsel, and all previous power of attorney documents are hereby revoked and declared invalid. Jennifer faced the most serious consequences. The district attorney's office had been cracking down on elder abuse cases, and her tears during the notary appointment had been captured, confessing to financial desperation and premeditation. Criminal charges for attempted theft by deception were filed Thursday afternoon. Carrying potential penalties of 2 to 6 years in prison, Margaret Chen called with updates each afternoon, her voice carrying the satisfaction of an attorney whose client had perfectly documented his own defense. The recording device evidence is particularly damaging, she told me. Jennifer's admission that they plan to use medical power of attorney to force the house sale constitutes conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Friday brought the final legal protection I'd requested anew, will execute it under Margaret's supervision. With independent witnesses and video documentation of my mental competency, My estate now included specific language disinheriting anyone who had attempted to abuse or exploit me, with detailed references to the APS case files. The house remained solely in my name, now protected by court order and enhanced with legal safeguards that would prevent any future manipulation attempts. My financial accounts were secured with additional authentication requirements, and Margaret's office was designated as emergency contact for all legal matters. As I sat in my kitchen Friday evening, reading the final protective order, I realized they'd gotten exactly what they'd planned for it, just not in the way they'd expected. They'd wanted my inheritance. Instead, they'd inherited the consequences of their own greed, documented in high definition for the criminal justice system. To prosecute, the evidence had spoken, and its verdict was final. 6 months later, I stand in my new garden at Meadowbrook Senior Living, my hands deep in the rich soil that reminds me of Sarah's backyard paradise. The morning sun filters through the oak trees I specifically requested when choosing this apartment, casting the same gentle light that used to wake us in our bedroom on Maple Avenue. The house sold for $782,000, $32,000, more than my children had calculated in their greedy mathematics. The buyers, a young couple with twin toddlers, fell in love with Sarah's rose garden and the custom built-ins I'd crafted with such care. I watched from Margaret Chen's office as they signed the closing papers, their faces bright with the same dreams Sarah and I had carried 32 years ago. The proceeds sit securely in my investment accounts, managed by a fiduciary advisor Margaret recommended, generating enough monthly income to fund my chosen lifestyle without touching the principal. Independence purchased with the equity of a lifetime's work, protected by legal structures that ensure no one can ever manipulate me again. My apartment here at Meadowbrook overlooks the community garden where I've claimed a 20 by 30 plot. The morning glories I planted climbed the same lattice design I built for Sarah, their purple blooms opening with the sunrise just as hers did. My tomatoes are thriving in the Colorado sunshine, and the herb garden along the south border attracts butterflies that would have delighted her. The grandchildren visit every other weekend, picked up and delivered by my brother Jim, who drives down from Fort Collins with the patience of a man who understands family loyalty. 8-year-old Emma helps me water the plants, her small hands gentle with the seedlings as I teach her the lessons Sarah taught me about nurturing growth. 10-year-old Michael asks endless questions about construction techniques, the same curiosity his father once showed before entitlement replaced wonder. "Grandpa, why don't Mom and Dad come with us anymore?" Emma asked last Sunday, her innocent eyes reflecting confusion about adult complications. "Sometimes grown-ups make choices that have consequences," I told her, kneeling to meet her gaze. "But that doesn't change how much I love you." The criminal case concluded in March with plea agreements for all 3 children. Jennifer accepted probation and community service in exchange for her testimony against Mark, whose conspiracy charges carried the heaviest penalties. Lisa's cooperation with the financial investigation reduced her charges to misdemeanor elder endangerment. But the custody modification granted her ex-husband primary placement of their children. Margaret Chen handles all legal communications, filtering their occasional letters through her office before deciding what deserves my attention. Most are variations of the same theme: apologies mixed with justifications, regret tempered by resentment that I protected myself so effectively. I keep one letter from Jennifer in my desk drawer, the only one that felt genuinely remorseful. "Dad, I know you can't forgive us yet, maybe not ever, but I want you to know that seeing you stand up for yourself taught me something about courage I didn't know I needed to learn. Perhaps someday we'll find a path toward reconciliation, built on respect rather than manipulation, honesty instead of exploitation. But that day exists only in a future where they understand that love cannot be inherited, must be earned through consistent action, not demanded through blood relation." The other residents here at Meadowbrook know me as the man who tends the most beautiful garden and tells the best stories about construction work and family life. They don't know about the court cases or criminal charges, only that I chose this place myself and paid my own way with dignity and tact. This evening, as I water Sarah's morning glories in the fading light, I think about legacy, not the money or property that children squabble over, but the example we set through our choices. My children wanted control of my life, believing they could manipulate grief and age into compliance. Instead, I chose control of my own story, writing the final chapters with independence and self-respect as my guiding principles. Respect isn't inherited, I say aloud to Sarah's memory, watching the butterflies dance among her flowers. It's earned every day through the choices we make and the boundaries we defend. The garden grows stronger in the evening light, tended by hands that built a lifetime of love and protected it when love alone wasn't enough.